The Redemption Inquiry by Michael Diamond. Part 4, Beasts of the Apocalypse. Chapter 18, DJRoNK spins out. Nissan Katz's first incarnation as a cyber-busking guerilla DJ comes crashing to its piteous end. The Eye of Zyz sees all. Behemoth's bBots rescue the malcontent for reprogramming. 28 years of cyber-enhanced re-education, not for the faint of heart. The little robot stands at the entrance to Nissan's makeshift digs, jogging from one foot to the other and back again.
What pleasure greater than the presence of honored guests come from afar for an impromptu visit?
Damn machines. No amount of stuttering will make you cute. Nissan Katz, a.k.a. DJRoNK, stares out at the arrayed hosts of drones and bBots hovering outside the wilderness lean-to he'd pitched beneath the cliffs of his former, now abandoned yeshiva. It is the season when the shadows grow long and life ducks its head underground. DJRoNK is on the lam from the corporate masters of his incorporeal visitors. Incorporeal in as far as the actual intelligence that governs their inorganic shells is located in the cloud that is no cloud, the cloud that interpenetrates everything, the interior cloud, the matrix of matter, MOM. Zyz Corp, Behemoth Unlimited, and Leviathan Inc. have not taken kindly to DJRoNK's guerrilla theater cyber-busking antics. Probably sibling rivalry. After all, each of the three monster AIs shares DJRoNK's birthday, Wednesday, April 9th, 2121, the technological singularity. His family clan, the gathering of strangers, had cornered some prime real estate on Leviathan, future home for all of mankind floating in the North Atlantic. The world's largest smart complex. DJRoNK is a seventh-generation futurist, but his vision isn't nearly as rosy as his forebears. While still a yeshiva bacher enrolled in the Jewish Studies program at the Brunoy Yeshiva, originally on the banks of the Seine near Paris, as his father and his father's father had done before him, young Nissan became obsessed with the history of the construction of Oxford Brunoy's new campus in the Pyrenees, a joint project of his father's yeshiva and Oxford University. He knew every nook and cranny of its architecture and geography. It was situated well above the deluge that repeatedly drenched the valleys of both the Thames and the Seine rivers, rendering their entire floodplains uninhabitable before the end of the 22nd century. What had the Rosh Yeshiva and his advisors, including Nissan's venerable father Krishna, been thinking when they cut this deal? Did they really think they could hold out here once the AIs issued their inevitable proclamation, uninhabitable, about their brand spanking new location? Thus spake Behemoth Unlimited, the mind behind the army of bBots that morphs itself into whatever form is required to scour the planet's surface, regardless of habitability, for exploitable resources. Once an area is deemed uninhabitable, according to the mighty Behemoth's calculations, the remaining humans foolish enough not to avail themselves of a place on Mother Leviathan's dorsum are gently or not so gently shepherded to safety, their whereabouts pinpointed to the millimeter by Zyz Corp's eagle eye, her armada of satellites and drones. DJRoNK was foolhardy enough to think he could haunt the local caves and evade the AIs. Interlude. Condensates. Something has to stop you. Full stop. Throttle all the way back. Engine bucking, coughing, sputtering, then silence. Get out of the car. Max wakes up from his pleasant highway buzz to discover himself sitting on the shoulder of Route 91 about an hour and a half out of Springfield, Mass. Bummer. He leans into the door of the old Corvair, only to find himself rolling down a grassy hill where the shoulder has ended, the door of the corvair hanging open above him. Head over heels, now ass, now beer gut, boots flying, trench coat flapping, a large bird coming to an inelegant landing at the bottom of the hill. Did that really happen? He thinks to himself as he sits cross-legged, the joint still smoldering between his fingers. He looks out across the broad floodplain of the river that runs through this valley, and it occurs to him they're all underwater. A tractor floats by. A stream of bubbles rises from the chimneys of each house. Max finds it a bit nauseating to view the distortion of all the submerged structures as their light is refracted through the fluctuating medium. Suddenly he panics. He needs to surface. He needs air. Once he'd been a good athlete, a top-ranked high school wrestler. But now, flailing underwater in his trench coat, he isn't sure he's going to make it. He's fighting for his life. His army boots cannot find purchase on the ground that was his feet. Which way is up? There is a vibration near his heart, and an alarm is ringing. Abruptly, it is clear he has no choice but to inhale sharply, even though he knows that it will fill his lungs with water. He gasps, opens his eyes, and moans. He looks around and sees that he is standing in the middle of the basement of the stoned tabloid press. The others stare at him as if he has just landed from outer space. From Katz RN, the Mad Yarmulke Society. End of interlude. DJRoNK doesn't know what the AIs are selling, but he's sure as Sheol isn't buying. He can't quite put his finger on it at first, the sense of something blandly sinister at work. At night, the glass face of every major city on the synthetic continent in the North Atlantic lights up with Leviathan's smiling sea creature logo announcing, "There's no place like home," followed by footage of artificial beaches and smart condos serving humanity's every need. They co-opt all of your personal devices to detect changes in your behavioral routines and physiologic parameters, indicating a possible negative turn in your emotional state. Then comes the unending barrage of suggestions and subliminal messages regarding exercise, music, and entertainment options, and dietary modifications, all while nominally preserving your free will.
Pretty soon you'll be feeling pretty swell,
the little voice natters at him. This is the worldview DJRoNK and the cyber buckaroos are waging an info war against, waking up the sleeping masses to the beast that they have lain down beside. They give their band a different name at each performance, partly out of sheer perversity and partly to confuse the identity programs that track them. For the days of the Blue Sabbath cult and the Lost Messiahs.
"Ram, we've come to take you home. Resistance is silly. You'll feel lots better real quick."
The chorus of dissonant cyber-generated voices grate on DJRoNK's last adrenaline-depleted nerve, but there is nowhere to run or hide. The last buckaroo. He is wrangled by two smiling mini bBots, no more than 3 feet tall, with deceptively strong grips on each of DJRoNK's wrists as they waddle along beside him. He realizes he is tired of this incarnation. He flashes on the end of the last graphic novel he had penned before he had given up writing altogether. He was proud of his graphic fiction series, The Mad Yarmulke Society. Set in Manhattan of the 1970s, it is an era most resembling his own, rife with rebellion, ultimately signifying nothing. He can quote from memory the final scene, the last thing he wrote before he put down his pen, never to take it up again. Crank back the lever until it groans in extremis, that last click on the cogwheel. The Byzantine device moans under the strain, the vibration that penetrates Earth's magnetic core, shuddering the planet in its rotation. mad clown harnessed, inscrutable expression painted on his face. Only the clods of earth that cling to his oversized shoes, the grass stains at his elbows, and the mud jammed under his fingernails betray where he has been. The sky is blue, not the brilliant blue of summer. Cold steel blue. It waits for him, Bardo the Clown. A place that is no place, for a being that is no being. Only information. He has been here before. Why is this incarnation different from all other incarnations? As the wicked son, he asks this question so as not to be bored to death. As the wise son, he will tell you that he is from a long line of catapult jumpers, just like his father before him. They say that each arc of the catapult's trajectory, but I don't care what they say. I'm tired of being knocked around. There is no explanation good enough. The simple son knows this and shrugs. All that refining and winnowing for what? Merely to do battle all over again? There is one who knows how not to ask. Nowhere to look, nowhere to be, nothing to do or say. He would refuse incarnation altogether. But then, do I really have a choice? A saint is just an accident of chance. Might as well enjoy the illusion of freedom. Don't know any better. There is no other world in which to be. Must be some kind of joke. There is nothing more that can be said. Refuse incarnation. Just stories. Storytellers, whispering sissies.
Before he properly awakens from his procaine-induced coma, a retro tech but a good un, Ram hears himself uttering the strangely familiar words of his childhood prayer. Modehane lefanecha melech chai v'kayam shechazarta bi nishmati bechemla rabba munatecha. Weird. He let that one go right after his bar mitzvah. Kid stuff. Superstitious nonsense, he'd always thought. He has to stop and think hard just to translate it for himself from the Lashon Kodesh, the holy tongue. I give thanks before you, living and eternal scribe, that you have rebooted my soul with mercy. How great is your craftsmanship. Where in Gehenna am I? You're in PS 51, Ram. Back to school for you, chirps a happy little robotic voice. A trail of drool escapes his lips as Ram lifts his face from the gurney. He swivels his head to the side just in time to see the nurse bot shoot out a probe bearing a towelette to wipe his chin. What the? No, this is definitely not William Alexander Middle School 51, the place where a bunch of his neighborhood chums had gone. Ram Nissan's parents, Krishna and Sita Katz, took over the Park Slope Chabad house to minister to the ragged remnant of the wealthy hipster crowd stranded there after Hurricane Izzy drowned most of the surrounding neighborhoods on September 11th, 2134. He'd never forget the day of his burgeoning manhood, the day when he was called to the Torah for the first time, when most of his neighbors lost family members, either drowned in the flood, fatally injured by falling debris, dead of exposure, or starvation, or murdered by one of the marauding bands of desperate survivors. All power and vital services were cut off to the neighborhood for 212 days. The redemptive message of Ki Tavo, when you come, his Torah reading from the book of Deuteronomy, and Isaiah 60, his Haftorah reading from the book of Prophets, lost in the deluge. Israel was entering the promised land, having attained, quote, a heart to know, eyes to see, and the ears to hear, unquote, the vision of Isaiah, to which he would a lifetime later become a grateful though unwitting party, seems so opposite to what was unfolding right outside the windows of the Chabad house. Quote, violence shall no more be heard in thy land. wasting nor destruction within its borders, unquote. It seemed so wrong to him, so irrelevant. What land, what wealth of nations, and what was there to know or see or hear except pain for miles around? Little. Perhaps the end of time was at hand. At best, the destructive power of the cataclysm was a mystery, perhaps akin to the collection of strange phenomena catalogued in Ethics of the Ancestors that were created at the twilight before the Sabbath of creation. Quote, the mouth of the earth that swallowed the heretic Korach, and the mouth of the well of Miriam that provided water for the Israelites in the desert, and the mouth of Balaam's talking ass, and the rainbow, and the manna, and Moses' staff, and the shamir worm that cut the stones of the altar in the holy temple, and the words, the inscription, and the stone tablets themselves of the 10 Commandments. End of quote. A terrible miracle. At 49 feet above sea level, Park Slope was marginally better off than the surrounding neighborhoods. Brooklyn Heights remained intact, albeit dark, at a lordly 200 feet. Crown Heights at 112. The joy of his bar mitzvah at 770, the Eastern Parkway mothership of the Chabad interplanetary mission, was literally drowned out by the deafening roar of Izzy's 85-mile-an-hour winds. The venality and outright criminality unleashed by the aftermath of the storm completely undid the last shred of the boy's idealism. His parents had taught him a more universalist message than was standard fare for Chabadniks. It was hard to believe any of that now. Brooklyn Heights, along with all the other islands that survived the first blast of Izzy, was an ugly scene of anarchy and tribal warfare. The entire bar mitzvah party barricaded itself within the confines of 770 for over a month. Ram's newly minted manhood was forever imprinted with the scenes of unspeakable horror outside those walls. Ram shakes his head to dislodge the watery apocalypse from his eyes, only to hear the throaty contralto of the Therabot inquiring neutrally, "Bad memories, Ram?" Looking around, he discerns this bot is simply an auditory processor, which can express itself through any material interface in the room. No body. As he stands, crouched until he gets his land legs, he realizes the place is familiar, though definitely not PS 51 in Brooklyn. Cavernous ceilings, dank stone walls, 14th century tapestries. Merde! The place around which he's been scrambling for refuge for the last few weeks. Chateau Latour, formerly featured in the Cathar Castle tour package, and after that the renovated home of Oxford Brunoy, abandoned when the entire region was stamped uninhabitable. And now, PS 51. His heart plummets and shatters into 1,000 pieces. Alien abduction. POWMIA, mining disaster, shipwreck, hallucinogenic nightmare, damnation, rivulets of sweat, tears and mucus, breath coming in shallow grunts, spinning, swirling, flying, falling. He opens his eyes and sees that he hasn't yet moved. "Something you'd like to talk about, Ram?" He stands bolt upright and shrieks, "Damn you, you disembodied cyber-zombie! Get the hell out of my head! No, there's nothing I'd like to talk about. Not now, not ever. I don't talk to damn squawk boxes, disembodied or otherwise. Time to sign off now." That is the last utterance he makes to his virtual hosts for the next 14 years. The one-sided conversation continues on the part of the relentless Therabot and her cyber minions, often interspersed with songs from Ram's childhood, snippets of forgotten conversations with friends and family and former teachers, random media advertisements, pop tunes, animal cries, industrial sound samples, high-pitched whining noises, the odd explosion here and there, water dripping, wind howling, waves crashing, stochastically generated electronica, laughter, sobbing, whimpering, tittering, screeching, lambasting, pleading, groaning, fragments of classical symphonies from the 20th century, vehicles crashing, glass tinkling, crowds roaring, babies cooing, women moaning in ecstasy. And the lights. It is almost never dark. The ambient light flickers, blinks, sputters, fades up and down, shifts hues, occasionally coinciding with circadian rhythm, usually not. The walls of the Re-Education Center are a continuous tableau of images sometimes associated with the audio track, occasionally merging into a 4D graphic kabuki theater in the middle of a room or a hallway, which dissolve at its completion. The temperature and the humidity vary unpredictably at unpredictable intervals. Ram has access to food and clothing and sanitary facilities, but the theme of unpredictability permeates all realms. The water temperature and pressure, the functioning of toilets, the size of clothing, and of course the taste, texture, smell, and temperature of food. The cuisine is mostly pretty bland. Now and then a hint of a childhood recipe, and occasionally unspeakably odious, and at rare intervals almost sublime. All hell's creatures, great and foul. Interlude. The 7 corporeal souls. Poe. 1. Flying poison, or quick evil, suddenly explodes with rage and venomous thoughts of evil intention. 2. The unclean evil, or shame, entices by tempting and luring an individual into a place or situation from which escape is difficult and then creates distress in the form of guilt, which generates shame. This spirit creates a feeling of being discredited, dishonored, or disgraced. 3. The stinking lungs, or the smell of death, destroys hope, which can lead to a sense of despair. 4. The corpse dog, or being scorned, is like a dog that has been beaten and starved. The presence of this spirit intensifies depression by despising itself and holding itself in contempt to a point of no return. 5. The fallen arrow generates the foregone conclusion that attempting goals is fruitless. 6. The yin bird, or night tormentor, harasses the individual, causing him or her to experience extreme pain and severe anguish. 7. The devouring robber, or sipping thief, steals the individual's life force, energy, by devouring it through negative emotions such as jealousy, envy, and bitterness. From Jerry Allen Johnson, Ph.D., Chinese Medical Qigong Therapy. End of interlude. A subtle repeating theme, if there was one, the leitmotif of all forms of life, birthing, developing, growing, aging, decaying, and dying. The scenes of biofatalism are interspersed with martial scenarios of myriads of robots mopping up the face of the blasted planet. These images, more than any, would persist by design in Ram's fragmented memory long after quote-unquote graduation from PS51. And just to make sure the new software took, Ram has also been given some new hardware through the miracle of optogenetic programming. Before he even awakes from his procaine-induced slumber, the neurobot also gives former DJRoNK a series of injections of expensive biotech particles directly through his dura mater into his spinal cord. Fluorescently labeled viral particles bound to ion channels, each one targeted for insertion into the promoter genes of every neural system in the Rav's body. Optogen, courtesy of PsyOps. Once every major circuit is wired, according to the specifications of the AI overlords, a final injection of nano-LEDs, brain lights, proprietary rights also held by PSYOPs, literally illuminates Rom's entire nervous system, activating a veritable symphony of fluorescent lights. As the Rube Goldberg mechanism plays its tragic way through DJRoNK's sleeping frame, the fluorescent signals flag each ion channel to let loose its flood of calcium or potassium or sodium, either suppressing or activating the genes downstream from the virally modified promoter genes, the biochemical on-off switches. This, in turn, renders the former cyber guerrilla fighter helpless to modulate his own emotional responses, sensory intensity, even motoric behavior. He is completely in the thrall of his captors. No more rage against the machines. The only thing that remains, his own, is Rom Nissan's bare consciousness. Rom survives the first 14 years of his re-education, like so many other prisoners of conscience, by employing the antiquarian art of writing, first in secret, and then as blatantly as possible. The bots don't really understand the lost art of writing. At first, they simply clean up the little messes they allow Rom to make in exchange for owning his soul. With each erasure by the Be Clean bots, Rom writes with even greater resolve to mine his imagination for absurd and pithy responses to his captivity. PS 51. The poetry of return. It is the one thing they had not counted on, writing, completely outside the purview of the machines. As is irony. They come to think they might understand what's making him tick, can figure out what's keeping him going by reading his writing. They create an archive, of course. They don't realize that it is the writing itself that fans the flames of his remaining spark of consciousness. The pure heart, the broken heart, the crushed spirit, the castaway, lips manipulated to sing and praise. The collected fragments of those scrawlings upon any available surface, using every conceivable writing substance, eventually culled from Rom's few tattered recollections of his time of horror, which burble to the surface under the ministering eyes of a handful of listeners, such as yours truly. These burblings, plus the cyber archive retrieved by the hacker resistance, take form as the pithy and mysterious tome Sefer-Yetzirah, the Book of Exits. Some say Rom's mother, Sita, channeled the first draft before Rom was born. Some say it was the time-traveling prophet Ezekiel. Rom's second 14 years is spent forgetting almost everything, the price of release. Sefer-Yetzirah, the Book of Exits. 1. Note, any toddler will tell you, in the digging of sand and the refilling of holes, the digging goes easier with each successive excavation. This should suffice for those that know. 2. In the moving of large quantities of earth and the building of structures thereon, when all has collapsed, the generation of excavators known to dig, to uncover with care that which has gone before, for this might be there and that might be here. Amen, Selah. 3. And the transporting of large populations, refugees, whole communities, necessary losses. Yet we find a pair of candles lit in the basement, a pinch of dough taken from a newly baked loaf, passing through customs. We give thanks. 4. The liturgy is changed with the change of seasons, the wind and the rain, for dew and blessings. It is well known to those who yearn. 5. Sliding glass doors, automatic sentinels, mark the passage of invisible beings that we must greet and invite to sit at our table, never knowing if they are actually there at all. How wondrous are thy ways. 6. The movement of divine energy, that which runs and returns, metered out in boxes attached to the sides of places of dwelling. Local holy men must mark them according to regional custom. Death notices in the old city, luminous works of beauty in the high city of the blessed, the unutterable which is in everything, the eternal determinant, comes down to us and connects as we wrap ourselves in sparks. 7. The passage from hand to mouth, that which appears on our plates and disappears in our gullets. An accounting is made at the pool that lies before the northern capital. The elixir of consciousness and light itself filter through awareness of place. The unutterable brings all into being by its word. 8. Worthies, politicos, dealers in protexia, and minor nobilities must evacuate, leave, abandon, and otherwise nullify themselves, their former haunts. The hoi polloi, unwashed masses, and general riffraff shall taxi by and mark the spot. Oh, what was there? Oh, bygone worthy. Amen, Selah. 9. 24,000 acolytes trod the foothills of the Galilee, that star-strewn land, in tow of the illiterate woodchopper. The gain in books, numbers, divine emanations, paid in the deaths of all but 3. The price of incivility, of prophetic incontinence, of irony. One of the 3 still draws, thousands of years later, as many pilgrims to the place, proclaiming each to each, "We are angels, rising, falling." The final accounting not reckoned, measured out in carob seeds, a word to the wise. 10. Tears for an ancient city, rivulets in limestone, a paper trail that traces the cracks in the face. At midday, one prays all the forms of happiness, lest that ultimate form, the form of a soul extinguished in its source. Generations, peoples, histories, piled and excavated, plumb the architect's tunnel, grasp the majesty of what lay above. Silence. 11. Neon sign, man running. By that you shall know it is the place of departure, and the pace of departure. Heed it with due speed. Sa Sufi.